Hello, everyone, and welcome to Barrons. I'm Andy Serwer, and welcome to our guest, Michael Walrath, who is the CEO of Yext. Michael, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
All right, so Yext is what exactly? SEO, search engine optimization, brand
Yeah,
awareness?
all those things.
How does it work?
We would describe it as a brand visibility platform. And the simplest way to think about it is we help brands of all shapes and sizes to understand how their brands, products, services are visible in a digital world.
All right, so practically speaking, what does that mean? Say I'm a company and I hire Yext. What do you guys do for me?
Yeah, historically, it's been very focused on things like SEO, traffic to your websites, and whatnot. I think what's changing really rapidly is that the entire world of how brands are discovered. Lots of buzzwords. We can talk about zero click. We can talk about agentic web. All those different things. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is if you're a Land Rover, you're trying to get people to experience your cars. If you are Allstate, you're trying to get people who are looking for insurance to interact with your agents. And so your brand visibility becomes incredibly important in how you do that. And the rules of how your brand is visible are all changing, and they're changing really fast.
Because of AI, right?
Because of AI.
Right, and we'll get to that in a minute, but you should talk to us a little bit about the fact that you're looking to take this company private. Publicly traded company at this point, relatively small size, $1 billion market cap, about $420 million in annual revenue, right?
A little more, yep.
A little more than that. You're taking it private around $9 a share. It currently trades for $8.50. Why is that? Why are you taking the company private, Michael?
Well, so I've been the backstory is I've been an investor in Yext since 2009. I was chairman of the company for 12 years. Rather reluctantly stepped into the CEO job in March of 2022 at a time where we felt the economic recession was probably going to be a blip. Exactly 4 days before the first interest rate hike. And I think we've done great work in the public markets. I think we've been ahead of the curve in terms of becoming more efficient as a business. I do think the public markets have changed, and I think it's very difficult for smaller companies to get the value from the public markets. To be totally clear, I've made a proposal to take the company public. The board will do all
private.
To take the company private. Mm-hmm. The board will do all of its work. I'm not part of that process, and at the end of it, any number of things might happen, and I can't predict what those things might be.
All right, I was going to follow up there. I mean, so in other words, private equity or someone else, there could be offers for the company as well.
There could be. I wouldn't know. Yeah. Right. So there's obviously a special committee and all the other important things that have to happen to make sure that the best interests of shareholders are looked after. All I can do is propose what I believe is in the best interest of the company, and we'll see how it all shakes out.
And the timetable is this year?
Again, not in my control. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I've been on the board for a very long time, but once I initiate a process like this, I really lose control over it, and that's up to all the smart board members and independent committee and lawyers and all the other folks who make sure that all the rules are followed.
Interesting time for you. All right, so getting back to the main event, if you will, SEO, is search engine optimization over? In other words, people going to Google and looking things up, does that seem to be in decline, or what's your take on that?
Well, people are still very much going to Google and looking things up. And as of 2 years ago, 92% of all searches were being done on Google. And those were traditional searches, right? You and I, we grew up, we learned how to speak search. Hamburger, near me, grass-fed beef, right? Or we punch in zip codes, right? My children do not speak to any search engine that way. They ask natural language, complex questions. And so the big shift from SEO to whatever we call it next is that the context of the questions and the way that they're being asked is going to change, and how we have to work to make sure that our brands or products or services are represented in the answers to those questions will change with it.
I mean, will AI take over search?
Yeah, this is one of those funny ones where, I think there was a period of time, I started my career in digital advertising, and there was a time when we talked about internet advertising as opposed to television advertising or traditional advertising. And for probably the better part of a decade, that's how we described it, right? Now we just talk about advertising. And I think AI search, answers engine, traditional search, all these things will eventually just be known as search, right? Or questions and answers. But right now, I think the differentiation between AI search and traditional search is that there are fundamentally different mechanisms about how they're conducted. And the
Right.
user experience is very, very different.
I think you have been talking a little bit, Michael, about being on the edge of a massive transformation from an internet built for humans to an internet built for machines. What does that mean?
Yeah. So if you think about the way that an AI search engine works, there are a couple fundamental differences versus a traditional search engine. Google changed the world when they came out with an index of the most likely answer to your question. By the way, I ran the search business at Yahoo from 2008 to 2010. We got beaten up badly by Google because they had a better mousetrap. They were also monetizing that mousetrap much less aggressively than we were. Fast forward to AI search, and one of the fundamental differences is that memory and context is much richer in AI search. So if you use ChatGPT or Perplexity or Grok or Google Gemini on a daily basis, what you're going to find is that it knows much more about you. One of the scariest things you can do is you can ask it what it knows about you in a public, so like I did it once, I'll never do it again. I put my phone on the table in voice mode and I said, hey, ChatGPT, tell all these people what you know about me. And it got halfway through its spiel and I turned it off because it was freaky how much it knew about me. And so the reason why that's so important is that the questions that we ask will not contain all the detail that's behind what that question gets converted into in terms of a search. So if I say, I'm hungry and I want some lunch, to you, that the universe of places you may recommend to me could be enormous because you may not know what I like to eat. My assistant, my AI assistant, knows exactly what I like to eat. And so they will turn that question into a much more detailed question that is, we need something that has vegan options, or we need something that has grass-fed beef, or we need a place that doesn't cook with seed oils, or whatever my preferences might be. And because of that, the way we feed information into these engines is going to be fundamentally different.
And it's always important to ask in that context, that last example you just gave, surprise me, tell me something different. Give me something new, because otherwise, aren't you just in some sort of loop over and over and over?
Well, yeah, the surprise and delight piece of it is that you've taken a simple question from me, you've turned it into a very complex operation behind the scenes, but you've taken everything that and by the way, every time I talk to my agent, it gets smarter about me. So it may say, hey, you should go to this Mediterranean place that has all these great things. Well, is the pita gluten-free? No. Do you want gluten-free options? Yes, I do. And then it'll remember that, right? And so I think that as we go through this evolution, when we talk about every brand has to rebuild their entire digital presence in a way that provides all of that context to agentic applications. What we used to be able to rely on was that I was going to win the traffic, right? They're going to come to my digital experience, come to my website. If I'm Land Rover, they're going to come to my website. They're going to learn everything there is to know about the Land Rover Defender, and then they might decide to buy it. In this new world, they're never coming to my website, right? The human is going to let the agent visit my website or visit with my structured data and learn everything there is to know, and then provide me with a recommendation. Should it be the Land Rover or should it be the Ford Bronco?
Right. I want to get into that because we're so used to already talking about how these agents interact with us as individuals. What you're talking about is how the agents interact with the companies.
Correct.
Right. And I want to drill down to that.
Yep.
You've also been talking about the marketing funnel being dead.
Yeah.
What is the marketing funnel and why is it dead?
It's not dead, it's compressed.
Well,
right?
What is it to begin with?
So the marketing funnel is generally, we've been talking about the marketing funnel. So you have consideration, you have awareness, you have consideration, intent, right? And ultimately, so you can think of it, it's just defined different ways, but it's generally this idea from like, I discover your brand or your product or your service to I show interest, which is often I come to your website and I do some research. And then I might interact with you through various communications channels. And eventually I go to the showroom and I buy or I order the product, right? And all of that relies on this idea that like this discovery piece is the piece that gets the consumer to you. And so when the consumer stops coming to you, then the entire top of that funnel, all the way up and in some cases through the buying decision, gets compressed into a single act. And that act is being orchestrated by AI.
Right. So how do companies get their products known in this new world?
Yeah. So the first thing they have to do is they have to make sure that their data is structured and accessible. So you hear a lot about. There's been a lot of controversy lately about keeping the AI bots off your site, right? This is a very important concept for, I think, content publishers, right? Where potentially the content is being used for training or for other, or to being repurposed. I completely understand that sensitivity. But for a brand who sells a product or a service, the last thing you want to do is keep the AI bots off your site, because what will happen is you'll become invisible to them. And here's an example of how this works. So the other day, just for fun, I went to ChatGPT, and I do this on all the different platforms just to stay on top of. So you can do this on Gemini or Perplexity or any of these. And I said, look, I've driven a Tesla Model S for 12 years. I like the car. I don't really want to change, but let's say I wanted an SUV. What would I consider? Ask me as many questions.
You as Michael.
Me as Michael talking to my AI assistant. I said, ask me as many questions as you need to understand how to deliver me the best information, and then deliver me a recommendation on several SUVs, right? So it was fascinating. So my assistant asked me 4 or 5 questions. Well, what do you like about the Tesla? What don't you like? Why do you want an SUV? Are you going to be off-roading? Things like that. It gets to the end of its question and says, okay, I'm now going to go gather information. It proceeds to research for 6 minutes, right? Which is an eternity in search world. But I know what's going on. I'm happy because it's doing the real work. It comes back with a recommendation of 5 different SUVs and all the pros and cons. And then it asks me another question. It says, which of these would you like me to give you more information on? So that's kind of where it ends today, but that's not where it's going to end. In the future, where it's going to end is I'm going to say, well, I think that Defender looks great. And they're going to say, what time are you free for a test drive today? We'll have one brought to your house, right? And that's the compression of the marketing funnel, is that never during that process did I, the human being who's going to buy a car, interact with the brand's website, the brand's social media channels, or any of the detailed information that the brand produces on its first-party sites. If those things aren't visible to the AI agent, then they won't be part of the consideration set, and they won't get to the end of the funnel, which is what actually makes their cash register ring.
Are the LLMs going to have, pictures and brands? Because right now it's just sort of generic black and white, right? So in other words, when they come back and say, here are 3 things for you to consider,
yeah,
will it be more appealing than it is now? Or
I think it's already getting there.
Yeah.
And I think that, all you have to do is ask it.
Right. For a thing.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying, though, is that Land Rover and GM and Ford, et cetera, really need to open up their sites, their data to these LLMs, right?
Yeah, well, I'll take it even one step further. So the largest pool of the $700 billion annual advertising spend arguably is Google's paid search business, roughly $200 billion. And then if you add Bing and some of the other ones, you're probably close to $250 billion a year being spent on paid search advertising, right? As search engines turn into AI search engines, then what will happen inevitably is that advertising will be the center point of that experience. But it'll be advertising not like anything we've ever experienced before. And for marketers, this is probably the biggest shift they're going to have to deal with, is it will be the first advertising medium where you don't control the advertising message, right? So what I mean by that is if you look at any advertising, TV ads look like TV, right? Search ads look like search results. Magazine ads look like magazines, right? What do generative AI ads look like? They look like generated copy, right? And so the marketer will be an influencer of the advertising copy that it will be generated by the AI agent or AI search engine, right? And so the way you will influence what the AI says about your brand is through 2 mechanisms, and they're both about data. One is the insertion or proliferation of the structured data around your brand. And the second one is about the value of the actions that the AI agents can ultimately help you to. So Land Rover will say that test drive in this neighborhood, in this DMA, is worth X to me. And I will give you the structured data about the product, and I'll give you the bid. And that's what advertising is going to look like on these AI engines in the future. Fundamental paradigm shift for all brands.
I was going to say, I'm just wrapping my brain around this. I mean, it sounds like a huge change, and it sounds like it's a lot for people to get used to, right?
Yeah.
And so are there different types of companies and businesses that certain AI platforms are better tuned to, if you will?
Yeah, I think again, we because we tend to focus on brands who have products or services, or so there are amazing media brands whose product is content, right? That is a different world. Like
Right.
our customers tend to be brands who sell stuff, and so ultimately the ones who are best positioned for this are those who have already figured out how to. And by the way, this is back to your question about SEO. What we've done, what we do with SEO is we structure data. We create these marked up pages, these perfectly optimized pages that are ideally designed to be consumed by search engines. We create replicates of our data through listings platforms. We create review responses. This is all data. And so those are the businesses who are going to be in the best position.
Right. So what does that mean for a company in terms of being appealing in this AI world? What do they need to do specifically in terms of structuring their data?
So what it really means is every piece of content that matters to you as a brand has to be delivered in a way where it can be easily consumed as structured data. So I'm going to use another example. If you go to just about any product website, so if you go to Wendy's.com, that is a very heavy, giant, image-laden, drop-down. I mean, it's a beautiful website. They've invested tons of money in it, right? It has lots of information. It has nutritional value. It has addresses, which ones have drive-throughs, the whole menus, all those things. If you take all the structured data on that website, it's probably 25 to 50 kilobytes of data. That's what the agents want, right? They don't want to go to the website. They don't want to download all the images. They don't want to navigate your drop-down boxes. They want you to feed the data directly to them. And the way you will do that is by making sure that, whether it's through model context protocol or other ways of passing information between brands and AI, is that you have to get your data structured, and that data source of truth has to be constantly updating in order to make sure that you're not sending calls to an insurance agent who doesn't work for you anymore.
Right. So are you terrified or excited by
Yes.
this post-human?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
what's exciting and what's terrifying about this new world?
I think what's exciting about it for me is that the leverage that will be created, right? So what this should do is it should massively improve the consumer experience around products and services that are ideally tailored to me, right? And I think for all of us that creates tremendous upside. I think the concern is that there will always be folks who try to figure out how to game this, and who try to figure out. There's always going to be the spammers, and there's going to be the folks who are ahead of the curve. And so we spend a lot of time with our customers and with brands helping to understand how they can be the ones who are ahead of the curve.
You've bought and sold a number of companies and worked in Silicon Valley. What are the biggest takeaways for a young person looking to start their career in that sphere?
So my bias is that these periods, and when I say these periods, what I mean are these periods where we're coming out of some form of economic disruption, and we're entering some form of technological tectonic plate shift. So I started my career building an ad exchange starting in 2002, where we had the dot-com meltdown and the resulting recession, but we were seeing this enormous shift in user-generated content and digital ad space and digital content. In 2009, when Yext was started, and Moat, which is a business that my partners Jonah and Noah Goodhart ran, that we started together, we were at the end of the financial crisis, and we were at the beginning of the mobile revolution. And those drove innovation. So where we sit today, and it's really interesting because there were 12 or 13 years between cycles in this case, we're at this, the backside of what's been a really sort of challenging economic period, and the very beginning of this unbelievable tectonic plate shift. If I'm a young person entering this space, all I want to do is get exposed to it in some way and understand that this is like the internet in 1998. Right? That's how early, in 1997, that's how early we are. We know it has huge promise. There will be lots of tears before it's over. Get around it, and that's what I tell my kids is get somewhere around this thing and then figure out how to ride the wave.
And what about for investors? What should they be looking at? I mean, is Google going to be okay? What are the opportunities here?
Google's going to be fine. I think Google's search business is going to struggle. And when I say that, what I mean is Google's monetizable search business is going to have to transition from the $200 billion monopoly that it is to something different. And it's going to be more like what I described in terms of more action oriented. And they're in a great position to win a big chunk of it, but they will not have a 92% market share. As far as investors, I think, fundamentals are fundamentals, right? And this is one of the things that has frustrated me about being in the public market is that I'm a weird tech guy in the sense that I believe that fundamentally the value of any business is the present value of its future cash flows. And we got so far away from that concept in software in particular for the last 15 or 20 years that we're really still paying the piper for it. But at the end of the day, all of these things are going to be, and as far as I'm concerned, every capitalist endeavor is about how do we create cash flow in the future.
And final question, you have this golf club in
I
Georgia.
do.
You've also had, I think, a place out in the Hamptons that you ran in Montauk. How do you divide up your time, Michael, between these leisure pursuits and your business endeavors?
Yeah, well, right now I'd say there's not a lot of division. At the golf club, I have the Hoopy Match Club. I have an extraordinary team, and that is, by comparison, a very simple business to run, and it's a great relief to have a simple business there. A lot of the other things I've done over the last 10 or 15 years were really important projects that I was giving a lot of myself to during a period when I didn't have a operating job. Now I'm running a rather scaled company, and it takes up virtually all of my time. It's even though I vowed I wouldn't go back into the operating saddle, it's actually really fun to be back in a world where we're solving problems at scale and thinking about this big tectonic shift. So I don't know how long it'll go on for, and I don't know. I like to think that for 20, 30, 40 years we'll be trying to solve these really interesting problems. But it's an ebb and flow of focus, I guess.
Sounds like a lot to work on. Michael Walrath, CEO of Yext, thank you so much for joining.
Thanks so much for having me. It was great to be here.
This is at Barrons. I'm Andy Serwer. We'll catch you next time.